Hey everyone, this is Ashley with CT Marina Digitals. I'm going to do a tutorial to show you how to use my new brick wall mascot backdrops in Photoshop. I have a couple different images open that I'm going to use. These digital backdrops are meant for close-up portrait shots, but I'm going to do a couple of different edits where the backdrop is closer to the back of the subject and then one where it's kind of farther away. So to get started, I'm just going to go to my quick selection tool and go up to select subject. Wait for that to work. It's taking a long time. There we go. Usually doesn't take that long. It might have been from the pom-poms. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my layer, and then I'm going to click back here on the background layer. Oh, sorry. Click back up here, create a layer mask, and then click back down on my bottom layer here, and then I'm going to go up to File and Place Embedded. And then you need to navigate to the folder wherever all of your backdrops are saved. I am going to use the Coyote backdrop for this one. Okay, and you want to make sure some of them, the light, you can't really tell which way they're coming from, but some of them you can. So if the light is coming from a certain way on one of the backdrops, you just want to be sure that you change that. The light seems like it's coming from the left on my subject and it's coming from the left on the backdrop, so we are good there. The backdrop is a bit brighter than my subject, so I'm just going to click on my subject layer. I'm going to add a curves adjustment layer. I'm going to press that clipping mask right there just to make sure that I'm only working on my subject and not my backdrop. I'm going to just bring up the brightness a little bit on her. And I'm going to go down to my backdrop layer. I'm going to do an exposure adjustment layer. Again, create that clipping mask, and then I'm just going to bring that exposure down just a little bit. Okay, and now I want to create space between. I want this to seem like she's standing quite a bit of ways away from the backdrop. But before that, you want to click on this mask over here, and you're going to want to zoom in and clean up any edges. So like this spot right here didn't really mask out, the spot within here. I'm not going to spend too much time doing that, but to fix that, you would use your white and black brush at 100% opacity, soft brush, and you would use black to brush it off here. So you can see 100% opacity, it was only 9%. To brush that off there so you can see the backdrop through there. And then if you need to brush back on, you can just press X on your keyboard, and as you can see over here, that switches between your black and your white brush. You can use white to brush back on. For tutorial's sake, I'm not going to spend too much time doing that, but you do want to go around your whole image and make sure that the initial parts of your image aren't too noticeably showing. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out. So to create that little bit of depth there, I'm going to come back down to my background layer. I'm going to go up to Filter and Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. And then how much blur you add is dependent on how far you want your subject to seem like they are away from the backdrop, or what kind of lens you're using. Like if you had an 85mm, obviously it would create more depth than like a 35. But this one I'm going to create quite a bit of depth, so it seems like she's standing quite a bit further away from that backdrop. Press OK. And now since we created such depth from her to the backdrop, we don't need to add shadow because she's not up against the backdrop to where the light is casting a shadow from her onto the backdrop. There might be something on the floor, but obviously the floor is not showing in this image. So I could be completely done with this image. You can play around with the brightness and the contrast. If you wanted to change the colors at all, like if you wanted to do something fun, like you wanted the image to just be in the school colors, you could do something like creating a new layer above the background layer on color blending mode. And you could come over to your brush at 100% opacity And say one of the colors is red, and you could paint on, this is really bright, so you'd have to play around with the colors, but you could do half the backdrop a certain color, and then depending on what their colors are, my school colors were red and gold, so I'll just do that. You can do something fun like that, so it's the mascot with the colors, and you can completely play around with it, however much as you would like to change it. Okay, delete that, and now I'm going to go on to one that I'm going to paint a little bit of shadow on and make it seem like she's a little bit closer to the backdrop. So I'm going to go to my quick selection tool again and select subject. And duplicate that layer, create that layer mask, come back down to my background layer, go up to File, Place Embedded, and on this one I'm going to use the RAM. Okay, and then resize if you need to. I'm going to grab this layer and I'm going to move her over so you just can see a little bit more of the face there. The light is coming from the same way. I'm going to put an exposure layer on that background and bring it down just a tad, not too much. Okay, and now I'm going to create, this is where you would go to your mask and go around and clean up the edges of your image with that black and white brush. It looks pretty good other than, actually that is the backdrop right there. So it does look, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to create another layer above my background and I'm going to put it on multiply blending mode. I'm going to grab a soft brush at about 25% opacity. I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard while I have my brush selected, and I'm going to select a dark shadow within the background itself, and then I'm going to paint on some shadow right behind her. So now it gives the look that, and if you're painting shadow like up here, like we want it, so I'm going to hold down Alt and select that brown color to paint in, so the shadows match where it's falling on the wall. But now it gives that illusion that she is standing up against the backdrop with that shadow being there that would be casted from her standing up against that wall. You still want to add just a little bit of blur, because if you zoom in you can see it's about in focus as she is, and I want it to be I want her to be in focus just a little bit more. So I'm going to go up to Filter and Blur and Gaussian Blur and just add a very small amount, probably only about 2 of blur. And then I would be done with that image. And then again, if you wanted to add a color layer and add different colors from the school that they're attending or get fun with that kind of way, that's an option as well. If you have any questions, you can send me a message. If you are a studio photographer, I would love for you to join my group on Facebook. It is linked in the description. If you want more free tutorials like this, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you're notified whenever new ones are uploaded.